So this is the system in the northwestern Caribbean. The Air Force reconnaissance aircraft that flew in here this afternoon found winds at flight level of 40 to 45 knots, westerly winds on the south side of a very broad, almost egg-shaped circulation. There was no evidence of a tight core, at least at this point. But you'll notice that it's been sitting in the southwestern Caribbean for the last several days, now starting to make its northward progress here, moving northward. And they have tropical storm warnings up for parts of western Cuba and also for the northwestern Bahamas. This is all part of this very complex equation that we're dealing with regards to the weather that's going to be happening for the eastern part of the United States. And this is, I haven't seen a situation quite as complex as this in quite a while. So I'm going to bring up the models here, and let me just, I'm going to make this big enough so that I can see this better. And we have enough of the new GFS that I think I can switch over to that and show you what's happening. And you know, the interesting thing through all of this, by the way, is this tropical system really complicates matters to some degree. And here's why. Okay, so here's our surface map for this evening. And you have low pressure there in the upper peninsula of Michigan. You can see the band of snow that arcs around it on the northwest side into eastern Minnesota. And parts of the UP where they're forecasting 5 to 8 inches in some places and some locally higher amounts. You've got a nice surface high off the east coast, and you've got this trailing cold front with a narrow band of showers and thunderstorms that runs from the eastern lakes down through the Ohio Valley and then the lower Mississippi Valley into the western Gulf. Now, let's move forward and show you what happens. Now, that front is going to be moving very, very slowly to the east. Look down on the southwestern part of Florida. You can see the isobars with respect to whatever tropical system comes out of here. And it could, you know, it may become a tropical storm. It won't take much to get there. So let's just assume that this becomes Tropical Storm Philippe. All the energy is going to pile on into the eastern part of the United States. And you're going to have low pressure that's going to develop. Now, regardless of whether there's a tropical system here or not, you would have had this happen anyway. The tropical system adds a little bit of meteorological forecast fun to the equation, because it's my opinion that this system is going to wind up getting absorbed by the stronger, more dominant non-tropical system that's going to be forming along the Carolina coast. Now, if that is the case, it'll probably enhance the moisture field and the rainfall up the East Coast. The models this afternoon have been having a really tough time with this, because the GFS and the Canadian model both maintain Philippe as a separate entity, okay? But the European did not, and we're going to get to the European in a second. Here, the new GFS we've been kind of going back and forth with tracks to the east and to the west, and it's been my own opinion that the upper trough was just going to be too deep here, that this should favor the westerly track that's indicated by the European. And indeed, this particular run of the GFS has gone that route. You have a very, very tight, wrapped up low east of New Jersey, south of Long Island by 8 p.m. Sunday. And that is going to be producing wind and rain. The European's track is further to the west, and the European has a different twist to this, which I'll show you in a sec. But this storm moves rapidly northward into upstate New York, right up the Hudson Valley, and that, to me, suggests that we're going to get wind and rain, and then particularly once it goes inland and north, a large portion of this area will be experiencing very strong northwest winds on the south side of that storm as it moves northward. This is going to be a very powerful, it's going to ultimately be a very powerful extratropical cyclone as it moves up into the northeastern part of the United States. Now, where the details in the forecast, the differences lie, is when we look at the European, and this is a very important difference in my opinion. I'm going to go to the tighter view here. just showing you the surface map, and unfortunately, I can't show you the in-between hours, as you know. However, I actually discovered a site where I may be able to do that and use, and I'm working on that. So hopefully in the near future I'll be able to pull up some really fascinating European model maps. But here's our map for Sunday morning. You can see the low on the European, and you see how the isobar is stretched down through the Bahamas. There's probably the representation of the tropical system. However, what the European does is that it completely absorbs the tropical system into the developing low southeast of the Carolinas. And as a result, you wind up with a low that intensifies faster as it moves northward and takes a track that goes from right along the immediate northeastern North Carolina coast to just west of Cape May, to Scranton, to my favorite fishing spot up in Pulaski, New York, which is north of Syracuse. That's where I went salmon fishing. But this scenario, if it is correct, would mean that we will probably get strong winds of 30 to 40 knots with higher gusts east of the low center track. So if you're in coastal New Jersey and Long Island Sunday evening, as that low starts to go by like a rocket ship moving at a very, very fast rate of speed, there will be some strong southerly winds on the east side of that low center. And then after that, it translates into strong west-northwest winds for later Sunday night into Monday morning. Every bit of, I think, 30 to 40 knots with some higher gusts would not at all be a surprise to me. With respect to the heaviest rainfall out of this, if the European's track is correct, the heaviest rains are going to fall west of the low track. So there might be an inch or two of rain, perhaps to the east of the low track, but to the west, we're going to see a bit more. I'm going to show you the GFS. I can't show you the European's view, but if you just kind of picture where the GFS has this area of 2 to 3, 4-inch rains in eastern and central Pennsylvania, all the way back almost to western PA and through much of upstate New York. That's kind of where the European has some big amounts of rain. Still has every bit of 1 to 2 inches or more as you move toward the coastal areas, and that's because as that low develops, you got that front that's pushing eastward, so you're going to wind up with some rain out of this. So I'm kind of leaning to the Europeans' idea that it's going to absorb this system rather than keep it as a separate entity, which may give this a little bit extra juice. The prime time for this will be weather conditions deteriorating during the day Sunday. The peak intensity with respect to rain will be from mid-morning Sunday to probably about midnight for my area, which is eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. And then you're going to see the rain gradually taper off. With respect to the wind, again, east of the low center, we'll have some strong southerly winds and less of a factor on the west side until the low goes by to the north, at which point you will wind up with strong gusty winds into Sunday morning.